Everyone knows Wall Street's uber rich often stash their wealth in tax havens. But guess what? It turns out the working class, the average Joes and Janes, you too can stash cash with 2 words: offshore accounts. Welcome to the West Indies, awash with Caribbean beauty and, oh yes, home to some of the world's most secretive and affordable shell companies. We know because the I-Team just opened one up. We didn't need a lawyer. We didn't need a plane ticket. We did it from my desk.
Can I talk to somebody about setting up an offshore shell company?
We called about a dozen so-called corporate services firms, from Antigua to Belize to the island of Nevis.
I just wanted to see if I could set up an offshore shell company.
3 of the firms allowed us to record their sales pitch for broadcast.
I am trying to set up a company that my name is completely unattached to. Do you guys do that?
Just listen as the salespeople offer to incorporate me an offshore shell company using their names on the paperwork. That way, if anyone asks, my name won't come up.
Our law allows for us to act on behalf of the client. There's nothing illegal about it.
It's sort of like a game of tax me if you can.
Do you guys provide complete privacy?
Yes, we do.
So what if the tax man asks,
Does Chris have a shell company in Belize? What would you say?
I would say, sir, we are not allowed to give out information on our clients.
NYU law professor Daniel Shaviro is an expert on tax havens. He says some U.S. citizens use shell companies to illegally hide assets from the IRS, but more often the secretive accounts are used legally by big American companies pretending their profits are born overseas.
For big companies, the trick is that they kind of claim all their income arose in tax havens, even though they're not actually doing anything there.
The IRS stresses individuals are not allowed to hide or disguise income in tax havens, but corporations like the one we set up, they're different. If offshore firms argue their cash is being earned outside the U.S., they can shield their profit from taxes indefinitely.
Are you basically saying that I can shelter my money from U.S. taxes?
Well, actually, yeah. That's the purpose of an offshore.
It may sound shady, but before you conclude tax havens are just a scheme to avoid paying your fair share, consider this.
Every American who has a bank account, every American who buys products from a company is indirectly benefiting from tax havens.
Economic libertarians like the Cato Institute's Daniel Mitchell say tax havens are actually good for the rich and the middle class, because having zero tax islands just a phone call away puts pressure on Uncle Sam to lower tax rates here.
Competition serves the interest of consumers and taxpayers, and that's why tax havens are a very important liberalizing force in the world economy.
Now, there are hundreds of corporate services firms offering to set up tax haven shell companies for American citizens. We chose the island of Nevis as a base because it was among the cheapest deals. And just yesterday, we got these incorporation papers, and you can see the official name of our new offshore shell company is Our Shell Company, LLC. We have the articles of organization right here, and we've got the certificate of formation as well. And right now, the I-Team has a shell company based on the Isle of Nevis. I'm not sure what we're going to do with it.
Creative name, Our Shell Company. I'm just joking with you here. So a shell company, if someone were to set this up, what would you use it for, like yourself, like you've set this up?
Well, it's unlikely that someone like me would actually use a shell company, but big corporations, they use them to say that their profits are being generated offshore where there are no taxes. So if I was generating revenue in some way, then I could use this shell company and claim to the IRS that my revenue was coming from that corporation, even though I live right here.
Right here.
Chris, a lot of folks out there are going to say you used a telephone and Google and you were able to do this in 2 steps. What type of law enforcement is there? Is there any for this?
The IRS says they are looking at this issue very, very closely. They have told us that anyone who uses these tax havens to shelter their income will be looked at very closely and possibly criminally prosecuted. But again, it's different when you're talking about companies. Yeah. Companies and profits are different from individuals and income. And companies right now, if they say they are formed offshore, then they can pretty much get away without paying Uncle Sam in many
Really
cases.
interesting.